Congratulations! Your entire continuous integration, continuous delivery process is complete. We have successfully deployed a release for both our Android and our iOS applications over to a distribution group. Now, in these last few lectures of the course, I want to show you how I said that you would enable distribution to the stores. However, this is going to be slightly different. Up until now, you could have used this application, the one that we have built throughout the entire course. But now that you're here in these lectures, you're of course going to need your own application, because you and I cannot both release the same application to the stores. So if you're here, it's because you already have an application that you want to publish to the store, and you want to figure out how is it that you can do it with continuous delivery through App Center. Now, there are a few things that I've done for me to show you exactly what it is that you will have to do. But before I show you exactly what I mean by those changes, I want to show you how is it that we've performed the entire CI/CD process up until now. Of course, over on GitHub, the first thing that we did was create a pull request right now to merge into test. Now that we want to release to the stores, we're going to have to merge into master. But the process is going to be pretty much the exact same one. Some checks are going to be added to this pull request, so the application will have to build an App Center. In the case of the master branch, you may remember, we actually have an additional protection. One person inside of this repository will have to add an approving review. But after we merge, everything is going to go as planned over on App Center. For example, on the Android application, we're going to see a build similar to the one that we see currently on test. One for a pull request build, and the important one, an automatic build. The automatic build is of course going to generate that release, but it is also going to add a test. You might remember how when we set up the build for our Android test branch, we set it to generate a test on a real device, and we see the test right here. And this is a test different to the one that we uploaded from our local computer. This test, all it does is just launch our application, see if it launches, and of course take a screenshot, as we see right here. The important thing, of course, is that it is going to be distributed. But this time, instead of to a distribution group as we've seen before, it is going to be distributed to the store. So of course we will have to connect a store in here. So let's figure out how is it that we will connect to the store. Now, for both Android and iOS, it is going to be required that the first version of the application gets published in the traditional way, in a non-continuous delivery way. So for both of your applications, you will have to publish the first version manually. And that means that over on Visual Studio, I've done a couple of things. Of course, I wouldn't be able to publish my application as it is right now because it was just too simple. It did absolutely nothing. So what I did was implement the actual functionality. And I didn't want to show you the functionality throughout the course because it's just pure Xamarin. We're not doing anything about continuous integration or continuous delivery. And I think that most of the people taking this course will already have plenty of experience with Xamarin. But let me give you a quick rundown of this project just in case you want to download the source code either from GitHub or from the resources of this lecture. But the code, the functionality in here is not going to be the important thing. The important thing is that eventually this application has to be published to the stores. And for that, I of course need the application to work. And so all I did was create an additional constructor for the app that is now going to be requesting a database path because I am going to be implementing SQLite functionality. I have this database path variable as well, public and static, so I can access it from anywhere. That also meant that over on each and every one of my projects, I added a reference to the SQLite-net-PCL package, so I can start using SQLite. And what I did also was in the app delegate and in the main activity, these are the files for iOS and Android where that app method is going to be called, the constructor, I simply created a path where the database is going to be located. And it is slightly different for Android and iOS. So I have this path and I pass it over to the app, the .NET Standard library, so it can use that file. And then on the main page, what I did was create a list view that would actually display red books. And so I have a text cell as a data template that is going to be displaying some name and a finished date. Now, by the way, everything in here is not implemented in the best way, no MVVM at all, but it works. So here on the code behind for the main activity on the onAppearing method, I am just reading the books and setting that list to the item source of that list view. Over on the new book page, I am now finally requesting some information. The book name, the author name, and the date where you might have finished this book. You may notice how I am not requesting all of the properties that I have in the book class, and that I did add a new property, but this new book page is going to work. And of course, the save button that we already had is now going to be actually saving a book. You might remember how this was assigned to empty text. It is now being correctly assigned to the text in the entries and the date in the date picker. Over on test, I had to update the test. By the way, I didn't change the name, so I probably should change this to navigate to new book, but I'm actually not going to be executing the test. I will later upload it over to App Center again, but that is not the important part in here. Of course, the book class I showed you, it has a new property. The save book method is actually saving a book. The read books method is reading the books. And other important things are the assets. Of course, I added the assets for a new app icon for both Android and iOS. But what I believe is the most important thing here on Visual Studio to do is that we had to set some provisioning profile for our application, because again, the first time manually we have to create an IPA file or an APK in the case of Android. So when it comes to iOS, what you would have to do is navigate back to the certificates, identifiers, and profiles, where we created a certificate, an identifier, and a profile, and create a new profile. Because the profile that we created was, yes, for distribution, but an ad hoc distribution, which meant that we could release through App Center, but we cannot release through the App Store. So I had to create another one with the same certificate, the same identifier for the same application. But now, for